Teaching with AI is different. And it really comes down to how we use the tools, what tools we use, and the environment that we create. So students utilize those tools as well to the best of their ability. Do we demystify the tools or do we keep them kind of on that edge of, am I supposed to be able to use this? Am I not supposed to be able to use this? What do we want to do? And are there times when we simply don't want AI tools used within a particular project or something like that? All of these things are important to come to grips with as we learn to teach in this era of AI, because teaching with AI is different. We knew that teaching online was different. Now we know that teaching online and teaching with AI is even different from teaching just online. One of the first questions that we have to answer for ourselves is what's my comfort level? What's your comfort level? And AI does basically two things. It senses, so in other words, it takes in all of this data. So it's sensing and it's always taking it in and learning, because there's a thing called supervised learning and unsupervised learning. A lot of your deep learning uses unsupervised once it reaches a specific point, and that means that it gets smarter and smarter and smarter. Or if we don't initially train it properly the first time, then it gets worse and worse and worse. So it really depends upon us. But for our comfort level, are we comfortable with the AI sensing what's happening? So that would be like within an LMS, always seeking out data to see who or what student might be at risk and the indicators that create an at-risk student, and coming up with those indicators as well. And then an activate would be actually sending a message out to that student. So the sensing part is gathering all of this data, and then the activating part, are we comfortable with the AI sending a message to the student? And even more, AI has been used for training, and it's been used for some amazing things where it can actually control. So that's the activate. It can actually control external things around it, like a car. We've all seen self-driving cars. You may have seen where AI people put on these sensors within their on their fingers and help them learn to play piano, because it would stimulate the finger when it's supposed to move, things like that. So that's very rudimentary where that piece is at, but are we comfortable with that? And that's something that we have to identify for ourselves where we are, because if we're not comfortable and we're using that type of tool within our classroom, then our students will be very uncomfortable as well. And as we're working through that, think about bias in AI. We have bias, and our bias is that we're reluctant to adopt an imperfect machine or tool, even if it does better than what we do. That's crazy, right? So if we're at 70% accuracy and this machine's at 90% accuracy, people tend to say, well, it's not perfect. I don't want to use it. Even though it gives you that 90% versus that 70% down here, which is crazy. And then AI bias. So there's six basic types of bias in AI. There's data bias. So that's the data that is used. And that could be for multiple different reasons. So it's just selecting data from one particular area or things like that. It doesn't have that more holistic approach. We have algorithmic data. So the algorithm that goes through simply goes through and creates the same pattern over and over and over again. And that kind of leads us to confirmation bias, where it confirms that what it's doing is correct. Does this sound human yet? Because we do this all the time. And then there's label bias. And guess what? We cause label bias as well. What's labeling bias? Well, when AI, think of a GPT, think of Chat GPT or anything that has to sense something, and people label, put on labels for, let's say, a picture. We want to identify cats. People went in and identified cats, dogs, whatever it may be, and we could be labeling with a our central tendency, our bias is in one area. So that's how we bias the data for AI. We label it incorrectly. And then societal bias, if everybody's who's testing, creating, building is for one part of society, it's going to be biased towards that part of society, whatever that is. And then the feedback loops is if AI just continually gets feedback and it creates that feedback loop from incorrect data, then it's going to further confirm that what it's doing is correct. So guess what? Yeah, AI does have bias, and guess who puts it there? We do. People do every single time. That's why it's important to, when you build something or do something with AI, you are the one responsible for the accuracy. You are the one responsible to vet the content that you get. That's why we can't just use it and move forward in any particular direction without vetting the content and really ensuring that it's accurate and doesn't contain these biases. That leads us to rethinking the classroom. For us, we want to rethink the classroom in so many different ways because quite often, here's an old school factory, and when we go and we change factories or new technology comes up, AI is being called the new electricity right now. And we don't want to just take this new electricity and shape it to our old technology. So we don't want to shape our steam engines and just take an electric engine and swap it out. We want to use it for its maximum potential. But us as humans, one of our bias again, as we kind of dive back into that, is that we utilize this new technology in the same way as the old one. So think for instance, two examples. The first one, Steve Jobs when he came up with the iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, but I have an Android um, smartphone. Think about when Steve Jobs came up with the smartphone and he had Apple move in the direction of creating this smartphone. Imagine if he would have asked a focus group what they want from their phone. And they would have, nobody would have came up with a computer in my pocket where I always have a flashlight and calculator. So I could tell my teachers that said, you won't always have a flashlight or a calculator, that yes, I do always have a flashlight or calculator. We would never see that happen. We'd be stuck with something else. Just like when Henry Ford famously said, if he asked people what they wanted for transportation, they would have said a faster horse. And that's why the initial cars that came out were called the horseless carriages. They looked just like a carriage, but they didn't have the horse in front of it. They had a motor instead. So that's an example of just taking one technology and just swapping it out really directly. And that doesn't get us where we want to be by any stretch of the imagination. So as we rethink the classroom, let's rethink, like, here's an F-30 picture of an F-35 assembly line, and that assembly line is moving. And we're not seeing just things replaced. They re-envisioned this assembly line and they built the line to reimagine how this assembly work was going to be. So as we think about the classroom, perhaps we're asking the wrong questions. Think about what questions we should be asking. Should we be asking, what do you think the classroom should look like? Sure, we should be asking questions like that. But that's just very cursory because we don't want just to build a faster horse, to create a faster horse, right? We want to rethink and reimagine the classroom. So we come up with that cell phone that's amazing. So we come up with that computer in our pocket rather than something that we could just dial and talk to people with and have. Does anybody remember having to text by hitting the number buttons 3 times to get to the third letter for that number and doing all of that insane stuff? We don't want that. We want to re-envision. So let's not take our bias of just replacing one thing with another. So replacing our online classroom with an AI classroom. Let's reimagine it and let's come up with some much better questions. So one question I want to always ask myself is, how can we utilize AI in a way that's new and creates deeper learning for learners? So let's start asking different questions. And I would imagine you have a ton. So put those in the comments because I want to be able to use them myself. So what does the data actually say? Well, believe it or not, these are actual outcomes from a course, and it's the same course, so English 101 with AI, English 101 without, and these are grade outcomes. So this grade outcome was 3 point, I want to say 3.6 or something like this, and this one was 2.2 something. English 105, almost the same difference. Well, this one had a 3.6 something. This was a 3.365, I believe. And then 2.5 without technology. So technology helps students' outcome. It helps them. So we need to know how to harness this in a way that reimagines that classroom so everyone is helped that way. Because AI, believe it or not, it does not have a general intelligence. It only has a specific intelligence. What does that mean? Well, general intelligence, that's what we're good at as people. That's an overall generalized intelligence, where specific intelligence is very well, specific, right? Is one thing. So, like the computer that beats the grandmasters at chess, well, it's not going to write you an essay. It's not going to do statistical probability. It's going to, well, it might do statistical probability, don't get me wrong, but its focus is chess, and that's what it does. And that's deep learning. But remember, chess, things like that, they have a finite set of rules too. So when we take away those finite set of rules, that's where AI doesn't work as well. Well, that's where deep learning does not work as well yet. Hopefully, they'll get there, and we'll continue to move forward with AI in multiple different ways. So that's when we have to start thinking of individual intelligence. So if there's 8 of us on a team, say, and we each bring in our individual intelligence, we also bring forward a collective intelligence. So if we have a collective intelligence, why don't we just add AI into that intelligence? So with the team, and that would create what Dr. Malone from MIT calls a super mind. So bring AI in with the team as we're teaching, creating, designing. And what does that look like here? Well, that could be an AI tutor within the classroom as well, because there's already a lot of things being done within the online classroom within higher education. And here at LAPU, we've already started AI tutors, Grammarly, read speaker for accessibility, personalized messaging, and student success, not to be confused with the student success coaches who have that one-on-one time with people. And remember, we're not trying to replace with AI, we're trying to augment and help so students get more um, and more, like for an AI tutor, not trying to replace a professor, just giving people 24/7 access to the content, because students still find AI tutor or still find professors, student success coaches incredibly valuable when they can meet and connect with them on that individual basis. And that's what they're so good at. So, like when it comes to feedback, students love AI feedback for the mechanical stuff, and then they love the human feedback for the experiential stuff. And we learned that in a study that we did on Grammarly, utilizing Grammarly in real-time feedback. Students love that real-time feedback on the mechanical stuff, and it gives them opportunities to get better quicker. So the tools aren't doing the work for them. It's coaching and helping them get better faster. And then they're getting that experiential feedback from the faculty members, and they're getting that personal connection with the success coaches. So it's very important to remember that we want that super mind where it's a hybrid team with the same, with people and computers working together. That's really the key. So the student success piece is that bot that goes out and it's searching within multiple parameters within the LMS, wherever else that you give it access to, finance, whatever it may be. And it's looking for students that may need to be contacted because they're at risk. They may need some extra support. So it's real important that we're able to use it for that. And what's possible? Individualized learning. Use it as a grading assistant. It's super effective as a grading assistant, feedback assistant we already talked about. And believe it or not, it helps build community and gives just-in-time assistance for students. So those are things that are incredibly important for students that we can implement so they have a greater experience. And when you are the faculty member, all of this stuff actually makes you look like you have a greater instructor presence. And when you have a greater instructor presence, that's correlated directly with the student having a more positive outcome which is amazing because now we can utilize tools to help create instructor presence even more. And if you're interested, here's a webinar that we are holding this week, this Thursday. That would be the 28th with Nectar. Kavita Guy from Nectar is going to be presenting. She is the founder and CEO of Nectar, and those are the amazing tutors, AI tutors that we put in our classrooms. They also have a big piece that they create community with as well. So that's an amazing new company, and she's going to speak on reimagining the future of or the future classroom. She's going to reimagine the future classroom with us. It's going to be an amazing time. So if you can make it live, it's on the 28th. If you can't make it live, still scan it and watch the recording.